6 years ago, in January of 2020, I decided to leave a company I had started 20 years earlier to build a company that I had always dreamed of building. And that was around the exploration of freedom and what freedom meant to me, and exploring what does freedom mean to each of us. It wasn't really an apparel thing. It was me on a path of looking at my career over 30 years and recognizing that I had a lot of experience over 33 years in apparel, but I never felt like I was on the journey that I was meant to be on. And there was this journey of I wanted to build an apparel company the right way. And then there was also a journey of things that I felt like inside of me were just never quite at peace, that I had a lot of unfinished business. And that really went back to the fundamentals of why I got into apparel in the first place, that the brands that inspired me when I was in my 20s. At that time, I was really into what Ralph Lauren had built and what he was building, the way they were building product, the way that they were telling their story. That was very interesting to me. Going into the music industry and being in that for almost a decade and getting to work with a ton of artists that were virtually unknown, and then within a year could be selling out an arena. Understanding that the foundation of how something is built can take time, that culture around that is done by word of mouth. And through those 30 years of being in the apparel industry, that a lot of things had changed. Where things were made, how they were made. I started in cycling and triathlon and endurance apparel. It was very technical and performance-based. And then in 2000, I was in Hawaii and I was playing golf in really warm weather. And I was playing in cotton. And I decided to start a golf brand using the technology that I had experience with in the cycling industry, and took that into the golf industry, which at that time, everything was cotton based. And over the course of 5 or 6 years, what we built, the company I had founded in my basement, redefined the entire landscape of golf. I took an industry that was cotton based and literally transformed it now into an industry that's very performance based. And there's a lot of variations to performance, inherent performance versus chemically treated performance. And we'll get into that at another time. But when I was in the golf industry, I would always think back to when I started my first company, because everything that we were doing was just meant to be very raw and real and pure. And when I left that golf industry company in the end of 2019 and decided to take a real look at why I wanted to do this, it had to be answering a couple of questions. And one of them was, does the world really need another apparel company? And I can tell you from being in the industry that long, the world did not and still does not need another apparel company. But my position, and I felt strongly about this, was that the world does need a company that wants to build quality product the right way, that wants to do the right thing, that all the things that are involved in the apparel industry are going in the wrong direction, and I'm going in the wrong direction for a long time. So I wanted to do it the right way. And in 2014, I had built a few thousand pieces in Toronto, really just as an experiment to see if FR could even work. And we sold all that product to Japan. Somebody found it online, word of mouth, and that showed me that there was an interest in what we were doing by producing garments here domestically. But the idea for Foreign Rider actually happened in 2009 when I was riding at the Giro d'Italia with the Cervelo test team. Its founder, Gerard Vroomen, had invited me over to the tour. And I was riding around and we were being referred to as foreign riders. And watching the Giro, there were American riders in there. And I watched Ted King from the team car. And I watched Lance Armstrong climb up Vesuvius, and Foreign Rider kept surfacing. And I just thought that was an interesting name because it was my first time riding in a different part of the world, and you were starting to explore things. And that really led into the mantra of the exploration of freedom. So make the commitment, early 2020, start the company, take our life savings, start the company, and take a lease, put some product into production, and in March of 2020, COVID starts. So we start off completely off the rails. But what I realized was if we could make things work through a window that was that challenging, that it would show me that people were interested in a company that was building product the right way. And we saw that. People tapped on the glass, people were knocking on the door, and they were doing what they could to help a small company that was building things here in Toronto. I'd made a lot of contacts through my career in the golf industry, and there was a lot of interest in what I was doing with FR. So Michael Jordan's home course in Florida called me, and we ended up making a custom line for them. And that's when we started to re-enter my previous life of performance goods and made everything using inherent technology, the best technology we could possibly find. So now here we sit in 2026, and what have we dealt with in the last year? Tariffs, economic uncertainty. I would consider it to be probably a year that's been much more difficult than anything that I have experienced in my career because there's uncertainty. And what I've watched is that companies panic. They panicked during COVID, and they panicked when the tariffs happened. And that really made me rethink how we want to really go forward with this company, because I think that companies that are trying to react to this tariff situation are overcharging people. If they're a public company, then what happens? They're quarterly driven, and big companies that you may trust or you may have bought product from, if I were to ask you what was their product like 5 years ago and their product like today, you'd probably have an answer that the product is different. Companies cut corners, companies cut costs, they go back to their factories, they're very aggressive with their factories and pricing, and you've got this whole thing that's going sideways. And we're really here to push back against the entire industry and do things the right way. And back in 2020, someone said to me, why would you want to start a new company when most people are thinking of retiring? And it really was because I had unfinished business, because I wanted to build quality product, earn trust, build product that's worthy, and build it word of mouth. And in order to do that, we can't really fake that. It's why we're doing what we're doing, that everything that we're doing has to go back to the fundamentals of what got me in the clothing industry in the first place back in 1993. Where it was made, how it was made, are people asking the right questions, is it going to last, is it something that can be passed on from generation to generation? Just no faking it, no cutting corners. And I think if you were to ask yourself, what are 5 brands, regardless of the industry, that you can trust? That if you pull the curtain back on that company, are they actually doing the things that they're saying that they're doing? And when you pull that curtain back, you realize most companies aren't doing that. That's not why we're in business. My team, myself, we operate with purpose, we operate with clarity, and we operate with transparency. Does that make it worth being in the apparel industry? I really think it does. And if you followed our journey for the last 5 or 6 years, or my career over the last 3 decades, I've made a lot of mistakes, usually because I chase something. But with this company, this isn't about chasing. This is about building something that is meaningful and something that is worthy. If you've taken the time to watch this video, I hope that you continue to follow what it is that we're building here. You will see that we'll be much more transparent in our ability to show what we're doing through our films, through our journals. Everything that we consider to be something that is interesting and has meaning to it, that's why we're doing this. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and please follow along our journey. And I would like to just ask you, what does freedom mean to you? Because it's a different answer for everybody. You may answer that question immediately, or it may take you time to actually think about that. For me, the exploration of freedom is about inner peace. And in order to have inner peace, we need to build a company that is actually trustworthy.